We went from a hectic, anxious, avoidant attachment style dynamic to a very secure relationship. And this is what we have to say to our opposite types tonight. So let's start with Mr. Former Avoidant. What do you have to say to anxious types around the world tonight?
I used to think that you wanted to control me, but what I now know is that your pain came from actually probably being neglected as a child. And that neglect caused you to feel like you had to control the situation in order to feel seen. And I just want to say I'm so sorry that that is the reality that you grew up in. I'm so sorry that you had to control the situation and the environment to have your needs met. And I also want to say thank you for being the one to fight for connection. Even though we as avoidants couldn't even fathom it, you were willing to keep fighting for what you knew was possible. Thank you. So now a message from an ex-anxious person. What do you want to say to our avoidant friends?
I can see that you are so scared of being controlled because you are so scared of losing yourself, and that somewhere in your past, connection to another human simultaneously meant that you had to give up your sense of self for that connection. And I'm so sorry that is what you were shown. I know that your deepest desire is to be connected to the one that you love, and that you just feel so triggered by someone seemingly trying to force connection on you. And I can completely understand that you, as a human being with human rights, do not want to feel controlled. I'm so sorry for how lonely you feel, and that it feels like there's no one that you can share it with, because to you, connection and control are one and the same. And I know that your avoidance is the only way your nervous system knows how to cope with a situation in which you feel scared. True love does not control. And if your anxious partner really loves you, which only you would know whether they really do, their deep desire is not to control you. And connection with them is the thing that will heal you and make you feel the most fulfilled that you've ever felt in your whole life. It actually can heal those wounds of feeling controlled, and you can become more yourself and have a stronger sense of self than you've ever had before in your whole life. There is so much hope and so much joy for you on the other side. And I see this with my husband literally daily.
The freedom that we've experienced from going through these deep waters is unimaginable. It feels foreign at the start, but once you get used to it, you'll never want to go back. And I just want to encourage you that if you are considering fighting for this and considering going through these deep waters, we're here to encourage you and say, do it, because it's so worth it.
Anxious and avoidant both go silent on each other. When an anxious and avoidant partner both go silent on each other, it is never just a pause in communication. It is the beginning of two completely different emotional worlds forming in opposite directions. On the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But internally, both people are entering very different psychological states that slowly reshape how they feel about the relationship. For the avoidant partner, silence often feels like a return to control, as if the emotional pressure that once felt overwhelming has finally been removed. They may not call it relief out loud, but internally there is a sense of breathing space where they no longer feel emotionally demanded or pulled into intense conversations. They start to tell themselves that distance is healthy, that space is necessary, and that not engaging is actually a sign of maturity rather than disconnection. This narrative helps them stabilize their emotions, because closeness often triggers discomfort that they struggle to fully understand or express. Meanwhile, the anxious partner experiences the same silence in a completely opposite way, where space does not feel like relief, but instead feels like emotional disappearance. Every hour of silence slowly increases internal tension, because uncertainty becomes more painful than even conflict or argument. Their mind starts scanning everything that happened before the silence, replaying conversations, tone changes, and small moments that might explain what went wrong. Even things that were once insignificant now start to feel like possible signs of rejection or emotional withdrawal. As this continues, the avoidant partner begins to detach further, not necessarily because they stopped caring, but because emotional distance starts feeling safer than emotional exposure. They convince themselves that if nothing is said, nothing can escalate, and this belief becomes a protective shield against vulnerability. At the same time, the anxious partner becomes increasingly emotionally activated, where silence is no longer neutral, but becomes loaded with meaning, fear, and interpretation. They may appear normal to others, but internally, their emotional system is working overtime, trying to decode what this silence actually represents. One of the most painful parts of this dynamic is that both individuals are reacting to the same silence, but neither of them is speaking the same emotional language. For the avoidant, silence means space and stability, while for the anxious, silence means abandonment and emotional uncertainty. As time passes, the avoidant partner may begin to feel a subtle emotional echo, a small curiosity about why the anxious partner has not reached out as expected. But instead of acting on it, they often suppress it quickly, because reaching out would mean reopening emotional complexity they were trying to escape. This suppression creates a cycle where emotional needs exist, but are constantly pushed down in favor of distance and self-protection. Over time, this makes the avoidant feel even more detached, because unexpressed emotions slowly lose their intensity in conscious awareness. The anxious partner, however, moves in the opposite direction, where silence amplifies emotional attachment instead of reducing it. In the absence of clarity, their mind begins to fill the gaps with assumptions, and most of those assumptions lean toward loss or rejection. They may start to feel a strong urge to reach out, not because they are certain of what is happening, but because uncertainty becomes emotionally unbearable. But this urge is often followed by hesitation, fear of rejection, and overthinking every possible outcome of sending a message. This creates a cycle of emotional paralysis where the anxious partner wants connection, but fears the potential pain that response or silence might bring. So they remain stuck in a loop of waiting, analyzing, and hoping for signs that may never come. During this same period, the avoidant partner continues to normalize the silence, telling themselves that if something was truly important, it would not feel this complicated. This belief helps them reduce emotional discomfort, but it also slowly disconnects them from the emotional reality of what is being lost. The longer the silence continues, the more both individuals begin building separate emotional narratives that no longer align with each other. The avoidant story becomes one of independence and emotional self-protection, while the anxious story becomes one of uncertainty and emotional abandonment. At some point, the avoidant may experience a brief emotional dip where they feel something is missing, but they often dismiss it as temporary and insignificant. Instead of revisiting the connection, they redirect their focus back to distraction, routine, or personal space to maintain emotional stability. The anxious partner, however, may reach a breaking point where emotional exhaustion begins to replace emotional pursuit. This is not healing, but rather depletion, where the effort of trying to understand silence becomes heavier than the desire to chase clarity. They may stop reaching out, not because they feel okay, but because their emotional system finally shuts down from repeated uncertainty. This moment often looks like detachment from the outside, but internally it is more like emotional fatigue taking over. As both continue in silence, something very subtle begins to happen, where emotional intensity does not disappear, but transforms into unresolved attachment. The avoidant stores it as suppressed emotion, while the anxious stores it as unanswered questions and unfinished emotional cycles. Eventually, both may begin to miss each other in different ways, but neither side feels safe enough to translate that feeling into action. The avoidant misses the presence, but fears the emotional demand that may return with reconnection, while the anxious misses the connection, but fears the pain of rejection again. This creates a strange emotional gap where care still exists, but communication is no longer available to express it. And when care has no outlet, it slowly turns into distance that feels permanent even when it is not. Over time, silence stops being a temporary state and starts becoming a psychological conclusion for both individuals. The avoidant convinces themselves that staying distant is healthier, while the anxious begins to accept that waiting may no longer lead anywhere meaningful. What makes this situation so powerful and painful is that nothing dramatic actually happens. No final conversation, no closure, no clear ending. Instead, the relationship dissolves quietly through silence, misunderstanding, and emotional self-protection on both sides. In the end, what happens when an anxious and avoidant both go silent is not resolution, but a slow emotional drifting where two people who once mattered deeply become strangers, connected only by memory. And the most difficult truth is that both may still feel something, but silence has already rewritten the meaning of that feeling into distance rather than connection. If you're in a situation like this, understand that silence always feels powerful, but it is rarely the full story. What you are experiencing is often two nervous systems reacting in opposite ways, not two people intentionally trying to hurt each other. And if you wait too long for clarity without communication, you may end up getting closure through distance instead of understanding. The real shift happens when you stop interpreting silence and start focusing on what is actually being shown through consistent action.
You guys have no intimacy, no sexual relations whatsoever.
Correct.
And she shared that you're kind of like roommates.
At the moment, yeah.
What would you like it to be? Could you say at the moment?
I'd love to be intimate all the time and to be able to look in each other's eyes and just melt.
Have you had that experience with her before?
Around the time we got married, and for a little bit after that.
What do you think changed? Because I see the sadness in you in the sense of loss of that.
A lot of it's because the simple fact that I was too scared to hurt her feelings because of her ex, the way he treated her. And a lot of things when we first got together, she said I reminded her of him, and I kept on saying I'm not him. I thought I had to be the nice guy, and I wasn't getting the passion I was looking for back.
So you adapted to being just the nice guy. You are a nice guy, am I right?
I hope so.
Do you have a dark side?
I've got a dark past. That's also one of the reasons that I backed off with Karen, because of what her ex had been doing and how, I didn't want to be put in that position where I could turn into that person.
Right. And you don't want to hurt her.
No.
And you love her.
Yes.
But the truth is, it's not the better than person. It's a sense of breaking through and dominating that you enjoyed.
Yeah.
And what do you break through and dominate now?
Nothing.
And how does that make you feel?
Like,
You guys have...
If your avoidant ex always seemed a little annoyed with you near the end, and you could never figure out what you actually did wrong, I'm here to explain. Here's the short answer. They were building up resentment toward you for months without saying a word. If you want the full answer, watch this video till the end. When you asked for normal things, more time, a text back, a little reassurance, you saw that as normal. And it is normal. But avoidants grow up feeling like they can never be enough for the people who need them. So every time you wanted something, part of them heard you say, "You're failing me," and they resented you for making them get in touch with their unresolved shame. But they'd never say that out loud, because that means being vulnerable and confronting that shame. So it came out in their behavior instead, going cold after a good night, snapping at you over something small. And the longer it went, the more they focused on everything that annoyed them about you. Because it's easier to leave someone once you've decided they're the problem. So stop going back over the whole relationship looking for what you did wrong. There's nothing there. They resented you for wanting a normal relationship, and that was always more than they could handle. If you want to move on,
an avoidantly attached individual who has not truly sat with themselves and recognized their own patterns and habits will subconsciously fall to temptation and desire and lust, and that destroys the relationship. If you haven't learned how to manage that temptation, then you are simply not ready for a committed relationship. Loyalty.
your avoidant is sitting on a pile of resentment toward you that they will never say to your face. And it's quietly driving the behaviors that confuse you the most. Here's where it comes from. Avoidants view expectations as pressure. The stuff you want from the relationship, even the fair, normal stuff, hits them like a list of demands they're going to fail. So they feel cornered, boxed in, like they can't move an inch without letting you down. A secure person would say that out loud. They'd tell you they feel the pressure and you'd sort it out together. But saying it means being vulnerable and sitting in an uncomfortable conversation, which is the very thing avoidants avoid. So the resentment never gets said. It leaks out sideways instead. That's what you're looking at when they go cold for no reason, when they nitpick little things, when they pull back after you ask them for something completely normal. They're punishing you for a feeling they refuse to put into words. And this is the part that matters for you. You've been trying to fix the thing on the surface, the dishes they complain about, your tone, the plan that fell through. You never get anywhere because the real thing was never on the table. So stop trying to crack every cold spell like a code you can solve. Start counting how many times you're getting punished for wanting an ordinary relationship. Then ask yourself, honestly, how long you want to live next to a resentment nobody's allowed to talk about.
If he keeps coming back after you hurt him, it's not because he has no options. It's because he made a choice, a real one. Some men don't move from woman to woman looking for attention. They pick one woman and they stay loyal to that choice. But loyalty has limits. And the moment he realizes his loyalty is being taken for granted, that's when everything changes. Because a man who truly loved you once is the same man who can learn to live without you forever.
Hear it from former Mr. Avoidant over here. If you had a mouthpiece to the brain of every avoidant partner in the world tonight, what would you say to them?
Avoidance. I want to say that your partner is way more chill than what you think they are. Your avoidance has pushed them into their defense mechanism, which is to chase. And that pushes you further into your own avoidance. And I want to say that running away from today's problems is only going to make tomorrow harder. So face your problem today, try and remain present. And my challenge to you is to go journal 3 pages of what your relationship is like for you. Nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to read it. It's just for you. But this is just to practice some self-awareness. Let's see if you can do that for yourself. And it's not going to kill you. I promise. Trust me. And now let's hear from our former anxious attachment type. If you had a mouthpiece to the whole world, to all the anxious people, what would you want them to know?
Anxious partners. You are probably much more important to your partner than you feel you are, and much more important than they are capable of showing you at this time. I know that it's the most painful thing in the whole world to feel that you're not important to your partner. So for now, I just want to give you this challenge. For 5 days, I hereby grant you annual leave from chasing after your partner. I just want you to rest emotionally for 5 days. Just feel what it feels like to not chase after your partner. If you want a healthy relationship, you have to practice doing this anyway, even when it hurts. Even when it hurts so bad, you have to learn not to chase. If they don't come after you, we'll deal with that when we get there. But first, take 5 days of leave where you just take care of yourself. And we can promise you that you are able to have a secure relationship if both of you are willing to work on it. And honestly, it's the most rewarding thing ever.
It totally is.
Stay tuned.